Welcome to Thanks for Visiting, a podcast that's part conversation, part time capsule. I'm your podcast host, Lex. In these minutes and moments, I'm sitting down with people I deeply respect and admire to explore life, the human experience, and the creative spirit. Together, we're creating our visitor records, snapshots of our existence and contributions while we're visiting here on planet Earth. Let's help each other navigate this wild human adventure called life.
If I can start a conversation around boundaries and photography with children and teaching consent, how did we not at any point say, hey, what about kids? Do they want to be photographed?
On this episode, I'm here with my dear friend and photographer, Sara. And Sara, I'm so excited to have you on the show. Thank you for being here.
I'm so excited. Thank you. This is fun.
Yeah. Do you want to jump in with a little bit about yourself, a little background before we go into things?
Absolutely. So I am a mom. That is my main work right now. And I'm also a photographer. I love expressing my curiosity about the world, my questions, and also my love of families and life, real life, through my photography work, and I hope it translates to viewers. I do some work for my clients, and I do a lot of work just for my own private satisfaction. Some of the projects I've done were around community and motherhood, and now I'm working on some projects specifically around certain family members.
I love it. You were someone I gravitated to when we first met. It was during our friend Casey's classes that she was teaching. The class was on early Christian thought and Greek philosophy, and you just stood out as a brilliant mind, kind-spirited, talented, and I think we resonated because we're these like existentialists at heart. So when you're talking about like life's questions, being open to things around us in the world, God, art, relationships,
philosophy, science. All the things, yeah. No, I feel the same way about you. Thank you for that compliment. But I remember those days and I especially get really excited to see a woman who is in philosophy and theology intersections speaking up and asking questions. And both Casey leading the class and then hearing your thoughts. And you always had these like beautiful, insightful reflections on our readings. Sometimes things I was like, I don't think I understand this. And then you would offer some of, your interpretation. Like, that's a really good interpretation of the text that we're reading. So yeah, it was really fun.
That's so interesting. I just remember after those classes, like you, Casey, and I having dialogues. And when I moved to LA, I remember later talking to Casey about my struggles with Los Angeles and just feeling connected to people here. And she was like, you are intellectually starved. You need to be having more dialogues with people. And she helped remind me that thankfully with the internet now, we're able to have these dialogues virtually. Like you and I do not live in the same state anymore. But it was just that reminder of, wait, I can tap in. I have friends that do feed me intellectually. And when she reminded me of that, I thought, yeah, I need to be having more conversations with people like Sara. Yeah,
and just for context, Casey is a brilliant human who also did teachings out of just like passion, pure passion. She had her full-time job, which was not related to that. And then she opened up this space that really lacks often, I feel like, in most churches for this intellectual debate and big questions around faith and philosophy and human condition in general. So that was really refreshing. And that was one of the key turning points for me in my faith journey, because I'd been kind of feeling burnt out and just was starved, as you would say. Like, I need some conversations that are like open and yeah, anyway, it was really good. And I appreciate thinking of you as a friend that I bonded during that really important time in my life. I bonded with you. So it's been like a true and strong friendship for me.
Likewise. And at that time, we also realized we had a connection around the topic of trafficking, that you had
That's right.
studied it.
Yes. I was working on that project. Yeah, on a research project. And you were working for SARC.
Mm-hmm. I was working for the Sexual Assault Resource Center, and I had just finished an installation showing aspects of the abuse cycle or the trauma recovery cycle, and you finding out...
That was brilliant work. Okay, you need to add a visual for everybody who's listening to. That was truly beautiful and really just impactful work that you did with those mannequins.
You came. I remember you had...
Yeah.
And so we just kept having these similarities of like, really feels like we're supposed to be friends. And to me, I say I don't have friends. I have family and I have acquaintances. And so you've been one of those like soul family. And just thank you for also how you have invested in our friendship, even when I moved out of the state. Yeah, just thank you. And I'm so excited to share with our listeners about you and your giftedness and your talent and your brain, because you're brilliant to me. Yeah.
Okay, that's making me uncomfortable. Thank you. I think the same of you, but I just want to say that you just touched on something that's kind of become a really important point in my philosophy on photography too, was that time you were working for SARC and I was working on a project that was ironically funded by a tech company, which, doesn't really have a credible reputation in this field and still doesn't. So they were funding this project really just like for PR purposes is what I feel like. But it was going through a university on the East Coast, and he was researching sex trafficking of minors online because supposedly tech companies were interested in protecting trafficked minors, and they wanted to draw a line between minors and adults because by default, anybody who's minor is trafficked.
Yes.
Anyway, we worked on that research project, and I think the knowledge that I gained, changed a whole lot more about me than it ever did anything about this tech company. And I think impacts my work to this day. And we'll probably get into that.
And also with what is going on currently in the world, it is relevant. So your work, to me, one, just looking at your work from an aesthetic perspective, I think it is stunning. And when I hear more about the depth of why you choose to take photos in a certain way, such as protecting children's innocence by not showing their faces, to me it was something like revelatory of like, why have I not heard more people have this dialogue?
Yeah, so just to give our listeners a little bit more of a background, the type of photography that I love doing the most is documentary family photography. It is not very well-known genre here in the US. It's growing in Europe. It's making its way here, but it is pretty slow. So documentary family photography, unlike lifestyle photography, is not you photographing family in a way that looks like their life. So a lot of lifestyle is posed at home. So you're maybe home or maybe somewhere outside, but it is posed and directed. And that makes it lifestyle. It's made to look almost like everyday editorial is what I call it, because it isn't real and we all know it, right?
Sure.
And then there's documentary photography, which is strictly that. You are there to document and not direct, not compose. So one, you completely have to surrender control. There's no control over lighting in true documentary family. Those are like maybe morning in the life of sessions or day in the life of sessions, and you spend that time with the family capturing. These are also not snapshots, which people may think is what it is. It's not the same photo you would take with your phone. Because to be a documentary photographer, you want to really learning how to observe. You have to know your tool, right? You have to know the camera and how to use it. Understand the lighting, the composition really well. And then you need to see the story and frame that photo in a way that highlights the story and the moment. And so you're observing interactions between siblings or parents and kids, and then you're capturing their story throughout the day. And so at the end, they have their family life shown in an artistic way that highlights the beauty and the struggle of their everyday life. And I think, to me, that's so beautiful. There's nothing more interesting than your real life, you know? You can
Totally.
And so there's so many more components to that, because instead of comparing with others, you just can sit and enjoy the moments you want captured anyway, because when your kids are older, the post photos will be sweet to look at, but they won't hold your heart. You know, you won't feel the same thing you feel when you actually see the genuine moment of your kid running into your arms after they've fallen and they're sobbing, but then you're holding them. And, you know, you see that photo, it makes you feel something. So that's documentary photography. Now, the thing about my philosophy is that I do not share kids' faces on my social media or on my website, and their private moments. Things that feel like they're too intimate or private, I don't post it. And that is a big limitation. I'm not going to lie. That's something that gets interesting reactions from people. But some of my favorite photos, nobody sees besides the families, or, you know, if it's my family, just me. But yeah, I've held on to that and I deeply believe in it.
When people come to you for a session to take photos of their family, documentary style, do they go into it kind of knowing your style already and what you just told us about lifestyle versus documentary style? Or do you have to kind of even let them know that a bit so that you're setting this expectation?
Yeah, I definitely have to educate people. It is not a popular genre. And people, when they're explained what it means, they like the idea. And I've started offering smaller sessions, so maybe like an hour and a half, which works really well with all younger kids, so babies especially. You can capture a lot of their routine in a small window of time. So I'll say, okay, I'll be there for an hour and a half. You can do what you can do with your baby. You're allowed to, if you want to include a bath, even though that's not typically what you do, you can do that. You can organize your morning around things you want captured, and then I'll let them play their day out the way it goes without interfering. One of my mentors said, we're not a fly on the wall. That's just creepy, right? You're not there to be this creepy presence.
Voyeuristic.
Yeah. And kids also don't buy it. You're a person. And kids are really good about detecting when someone's acting in a strange way, right? This is not normal. So they are really curious, and they'll be like glued to you. They won't really relax much. They'll be focused on you. And I think it's great. I actually love that about kids. It's such a, good survival instinct. I'm like, there's a new person in your house.
They're curious.
Yeah, they're curious. So I always introduce myself to the kids, and I talk to them. I show them if they're younger kids, I'll let them click on the camera, hear the sound. I'm like, this is the sound it makes when I take pictures.
Cool.
And I'll tell them, this is why I'm here. I'm taking these pictures for you and your family so you can look at them when you're older. If they're older kids, I'll explain, a lot of times your parents take pictures, so they don't get to be in the story. And this is really special that you'll get to look back and see how your parents were in that moment. Remember, your connection, especially moms. Moms are always the ones taking photos. So I feel like it's always such a sweet gift to moms to have that visual of their life with the kids.
You're making me think of so much now, because I remember my mom, she would set up a video camcorder and hit record. I'm like, clearly this is probably what I get this posterity, this keeping of these mini time capsules from. But she would hit record and have it on a tripod. And so it was cool because I actually got to see her in some of it. And it was really lovely. And then when we graduated, she made all of us a DVD of any of the videos that had us in it. And it really was cool, to your point, to have these memories and these snapshots of someone's personality come through, these little personalities that, people can tell you stories of what you were like, but it's different to kind of see it come through in a photo as you're getting older. And like, as I was going into my 20s, exploring the world without my parents being my guardians anymore, you do kind of wonder, like, who was I growing up? Who am I becoming? Who is the person I want to be? So I think you're doing something really special. And I love that you're providing families with the ability for them to be in these snapshots, not just behind the camera looking in, but you're allowing them the opportunity to be in it.
I just want to say, good job, Mama. I love that she did that. And she had that documentary. I mean, you hear so many everyday people have that in them. They know the importance in the moment. They know this is something that's their treasure that they want to hold on to. And
yeah,
I almost feel like phones did a big disservice because your mom knew she had to set it up to make it happen. Now we have this idea of, well, if we just take 1,000 photos a week, we will have lots to hold on to. And it's just, well, what's good quality in there? What's actually going to bring something back for you or your child? I love that aspect of documentary photography. I also kind of think it's so interesting how photos impact. This will be an interesting study, I feel like, for these digital nomad kids. How photos can reshape your memory. Because in truth, our memory is not our experiencing self and our remembering self is not the same thing. It's not accurate. And so you look at photos and you create this narrative about your childhood, right? And I even see that in my kids. Through my kids, I'll talk to them about photography often and photos. And the things that they'll ask me to photograph, I would never think. Like my boy's like, I need you to photograph that. He's like, hey, Mama, can you take a picture of this? And he had taken a bunch of little pieces of paper and made a little trace from like the front door to his bedroom. And I don't even remember what it was for. He created a whole play, but he's like, I want to remember this forever. Oh. And it was a part of his elaborate play. And it was so important to him. And I always think about, like, this is what we tell them was important about them when you're just, like, taking these snapshots. And a lot of them right now with phones is how they looked, right? It's like, smile, look at the camera. And we miss out on so much about their mind. I'm like, well, one day I want to show you this photo of these pieces of paper and tell you, look, this was fascinating to you that day. And you really wanted to hold on to this memory, right? But this is what happens when you include kids in the conversation about them, who they are, how they want to be presented and remembered, right? And which photo, sometimes I'll ask them, can I take your photo now? And they're like, no. I'm like, all right, I respect that. You're adorable right now, but also like you don't want to be photographed. So cool. Or I'll ask them, can I send this to Bob and Dada? That's my parents. And they'll say no. I'm like, okay.
You're a parent that's very good with observing boundaries. I think that's also something our generation maybe didn't. Like our parents weren't taught a ton about boundaries, nor were we. Like the boundary word for me came in my 20s, probably.
Yeah.
Us growing up, it was like, give relative so-and-so a hug. And now people are having that dialogue of, don't make your kids do that. As you're talking and seeing in your work, you have this reverence and respect for human life, especially protecting innocence. Also kind of curious, like, did you always have a kind of heart after children? Even your work with the trafficking research shows me you're someone that is about protecting others and protecting, for sure, youth and their innocence and their boundaries and their rights.
Yeah, so I have two thoughts. One, you touched on something that's really important to me, and you talk about how we just now are talking about boundaries around physical touch, right? This was not a thing before. What I think right now is just absolutely blowing my mind. The same people who teach their children boundaries around physical touch, and I'm glad that they do. There's so many that still don't. It's alarming. Do not even consider boundaries around their children's digital exposure. And that means how much are you sharing of your children's lives, their private moments, their personal information with sometimes, honestly, everybody. The whole world, whoever is willing to look at it can see it. Two is this expectation that children should always be willing to be photographed because we think they should. And it's often, honestly, it's pretty vain sometimes, though. It's just so we can show it to our friends and family. And it's kind of like, this is zero benefit for this child, like zero benefit. And they're in the middle of something, right? They're playing and you're like, hey, stop, I got to take a picture of you right now. I'm going to say this right now. I have done this. I'm speaking out of like my own self-reflection. And I've caught myself being like, why am I doing this? If I'm in the middle of my work and somebody came and says, can you stop to take a picture of you? I'll be like, are you out of your mind? How is this a normal thing to do?
Totally.
Or like, and this is a big project that I've seen it in my head and I want to make it happen. You just need to find a family that's willing to go on this journey with me. Say you're, I don't know, at a bar or in a coffee shop and you're just feeling vulnerable but wanting to be social and you reach out and start talking to someone. And imagine your partner comes and be like, oh, you have a new friend. Let me take a picture of you two together. this is what we do to children all the time in parks. And I'm like, they look just as weirded out by this.
Yeah.
As I would be like, I just met this person. We're trying to figure out how to play. And you're like, let me take a picture of you and your new friend. I'm like, wow, how do we normalize this? Or it's just, there's so many things that I like kind of observe parents do. And nobody interrupts this thought, right? I'm like, we need to start interrupting these thoughts. So this is normal and expected. Just because we have a phone on us all the time doesn't mean that we should be photographing our children all the time.
Yes.
And so, yeah, if I can start a conversation around boundaries and photography with children and teaching consent, how did we not at any point say, hey, what about kids? Do they want to be photographed? Do they even like? And I was a shy kid. I did not want to be photographed a lot. I really just didn't. I think of that all the time. They just assume the kids want to be photographed and that they're okay. Or even worse, we just don't even think that it matters what they think, right? We're just like, I'm going to send all the pictures because you're so cute or funny or whatever, or silly to everybody I think should see this photo without ever asking you. And there was a photographer who shared a story recently that she had on her website photos of her children. She was more of a documentary photographer too. But most of us are mixed just because it is a tough genre to like do exclusively. And a kid came home from school and she was in tears because apparently some other kids from school went on her mom's website and found a photo of this poor kid as a toddler potty training. And they printed it out, brought it to school, and we're just like, I was like, yes, we all get potty trained. And no, I would have never wanted anybody to see pictures of me potty training. So I have photos that I've taken of my kids or other people's kids. And I'm like, hey, you know, I'll give you a photo of your child, but like, this is not something I'll post ever on my social media or anywhere public because it's not a public moment. It's truly a private moment and it needs to stay there, you know? Even if we choose to photograph it, it has a different weight.
And that, to me, is like the conversation around all sorts of art. When you're an artist, you can see art and opportunity in so many things. It doesn't mean that everything is meant for the public. Like, there are songs that I have written because they needed to come out.
Yeah.
And it was part of my healing or just my part of exploration. Or, like, it was not even a deep song, but it's me just testing things out. Or not everything has to be made public. You're talking about this idea of like, how did we get to this point where we're not even considering, one, all the parties involved, or two, what is my goal, what is my intention or my motive behind this? Like, what is this getting me? And one of the things that's drawn me to you, as well as pretty much everyone that is a guest on the show, is self-reflection. I am so drawn to artists who are about self-reflection, which maybe sounds obvious as part of an artistic quality, but it's not. There are artists who are drawn for sake of vanity and celebrity or showing, and I think you even touched on that with why we show things is more for attention. Or you could also be telling these kids, like, don't you want to be, like, famous? Can I take your photo? It's like, what a different, what a different way you could pitch it and manipulate for you as a photographer to get your images out there, like shock or this or that.
Yeah. Safety to me seems like, wow, this should be an obvious, especially right now. We're talking about what's going on in our country, what we're learning. And it's like, oh, this has been happening. Going back to the research work that I did, the dark web is really dark. There's no one regulating there. People think that there's some kind of a magical force going out there to protect the world, to protect the children. My work during that research project really changed how I see the world. It kind of like, I felt like he lifted a veil and then I can see what's happening underneath in the depths of our society. The ugliest things. And I'll just say, I only just scratched the surface. I only worked in that field 2 years, which actually is really typical. That's the average age for turnover. Because burnout rate is so high. So either people who don't care work in that field and that's scary, or people care, but they can't care that intensely for that long. But yeah, the dark web is a really dark place. I don't know. People assume that there's someone out there in our government that's, wow, so caring and efficient, protecting children. No one is protecting children. No one's checking where your photos are going. The photos you're putting out as public are exactly that, public. Even photos that you put as maybe private, still owned by the tech company that you donated them to, is basically how you should see it. You're just donating information to whoever wants to do whatever with it. And now we're learning maybe those tech CEOs aren't really interested in protecting your children. Quite the opposite. And it is scary. People don't want to hear this because it does turn the conversation into this like guilt and fear and anxiety, and we're all full of it already. But I think we owe it to our children to be wise. And I say this often, I don't think everybody's best response looks the same. But I do think we should all collectively do better. We should all collectively consider these things more because we have to. We owe it to our children. Because before the damage is done, we can do something to prevent it. I think conversations around sexual assault prevention with children are very important. I think digital safety is so important because here's the thing. During this research, things that people who are really twisted do is they'll download photos. They'll look for photos of specific children that they like, then download them, and they can turn them into, there's like things like video games for pedophiles where they take the photo of the child and they turn it into an actual figure in a video game. So part of my job was interviewing. So I interviewed everybody from police officers and FBI agents and lawyers to a lot of arrested sex buyers and even a pimp once.
Did you attend John's school before?
I did.
I attended it as part of my training.
Yeah. People who don't know about John's school, back when Lex and I were working in this field, in Portland, there was a law. If you get arrested with a minor, it's automatically a felony, which is not the case in many other states. If the person is not a minor, they get a pass for going to John's school. So John's school is they can wipe their record clean if they pay a big fine and attend a John school, which is basically a full-day program that's aimed at educating people around sex trafficking and what they're contributing to. Yeah. How these women came into the industry, what it cost them, how they end up in life. Like, it is just such a problematic field, and they often have this illusion that this was their choice, and it's not the case.
It was eye-opening.
It was so eye-opening. So there was a lot of different approaches to how to handle these situations when somebody's arrested soliciting a sex worker. And it is really interesting. Some states approached it from a shame base. Mm-hmm. Portland was trying to get ahead of that. And also it meant acknowledging that instead of, for the longest time, it was victims who were getting arrested and fined. And for the first time, because they thought, let's reduce the supply and then we'll reduce the demand.
Right.
And this is the language that was actually used. Now, this is like a very messed up way to talk about it, but they're like, no, let's get after the demand. If we reduce the demand, like very business terms, and then all these local organizations are like, we're talking about predominantly trafficked people. And majority of them, I think at that point, the last statistic that I heard was that anywhere around 90%, specifically for women who were in the industry, were trafficked.
Yes.
And majority entered as minors. So a lot of like runaway youth, foster care youth, just the most vulnerable of our children. These are children we're talking about. So the average entry age was like 10 for girls and 12 for boys. Was boys and transgender was like 12 and then 10 for girls was the statistic that. And now I hope we have, since then they've learned more, and there's like, but isn't that the scariest statistic?
Yes, I worked at a group home for foster youth. Every kid that kind of came in, there was like an assessment of if they were believed to maybe have been trafficked, because within 48 hours, a homeless youth or like a runaway youth is approached by a pimp. Within 48 hours of them leaving their residence or wherever they were, they're approached by a pimp, which just speaks to the level of vulnerability within our homeless youth and unhoused youth and runaways. And it also speaks to the opportunistic mindset of exploiters, of
predators. Yep. It is scary. They're organized. This is what we've found. Like, I remember during those days, it's like, these people are not just waiting for chances to happen. They're out there pursuing them. They're organized. They have entire scripts on how to approach and how to break a child. This is been passed around. They even found it in a motel in Portland when the police busted in. They found in a drawer, there was an entire, like, how to break their spirit list. It's what it was called. How to abuse, this is insane. And they pass around this knowledge. So we are here passively waiting for some organization to take care of this while they're organized and very active, very alert. If they can find a child within 48 hours, they're out there doing this all the time. This is literally their full-time job. While we're on the topic of trafficking, I wanted to address a really common misconception about trafficking, and that is that it requires a physical relocation of the victim, mostly internationally. And this is not true. Most trafficking actually happens locally. And this can happen while the victim is still living in their home with their family without other people understanding what's going on. This is why the topic is so complex. But I think it's important to say this now. Also, digital exploitation and trafficking is also a form of trafficking, even if it doesn't involve physical trafficking of the person. It is just as dangerous and traumatic for the victim, and it's really hard to see, especially if the person's in the room and are being forced, blackmailed, threatened to create certain content and provide it online. So I'm just throwing this out there for people who are listening and might want to learn more, hopefully everybody. They're great resources. Keep an eye out for people around you. Notice any behavior that looks different. And mostly keep conversations open with your family members. Talk to other people. Talk about trafficking. Talk about the dangers of online. Be known as a safe person so you can learn how you can be a trusted adult in someone's life. And that is a very important role to play. And this starts by learning more about how to be a trusted adult. So we will provide some resources, especially for parents, on the topic of children and teaching them body autonomy, body safety. So those will be linked in the notes.
I think it is hard, and it ties into your work and what you are doing and the good you are doing. I think it's hard for people to look darkness and wickedness, maybe not in the eye, but to admit it exists. It's a lot easier for us to remain in the dark about it. You know, we all need boundaries around the traumatic things of the world, but us ignoring it and being passive, especially when it comes to these vulnerable populations, it's not enough for us to turn an eye. I think it's so incredible hearing your background and how that's informed your work now. I'm sure it's also impacted you as a mom. And now hearing about things like AI and Grok and its ability. But what you're doing is you're bringing awareness. And I do think we can shine a light on the dark by being a light and also being an alternative. And to me, you're showing how we can do things alternatively, how we can capture these moments alternatively and still protect the innocent and protect the vulnerable.
Yeah, back to photography, and we went into that field, which I think is such an important conversation.
I agree.
Anybody who's ever in any way working with children should have this at the forefront of their mind, because children.
Even if you aren't a parent, even if you don't work with kids, you were once a child. Some of the stuff can bring up things that you might not have gotten as a kid, the protection you might not have gotten. So
Yeah, I think it's a multi-layered response. I think photography is just one aspect of it. Very important now with AI technology. This is not a joke. This is getting so much more serious than it was before. And I think it's good for us to be a little bit alarmed. Yeah. I'm actually hoping to see a revival of film cameras. Why not? Take film photos. Nobody can take that. And you're also it's fun. It's beautiful. And guess what? You don't have to worry about it. And I'm actually really thinking, because I do film photography for my own pleasure, but then digital is what I use for clients. Film is just tricky to do for clients. But, it's not impossible. And I actually hope somebody gets inspired and says, no, let me show you that people have told me that it's really hard to grow my business and not show kids' faces. And I'll tell you, it's true. I don't post as much. I just don't. Because a lot of those maybe most special moments are with, showing kids. And I've just decided, I had a moment when I sat down And I really wrestle with it because I'm like, truly, I'm not reaching people. There's people with thousands of followers and so much business and so much more credit than my work ever gets. And I'm like, okay, what am I doing? Am I just going to just basically push myself out of the industry by being stubborn about it? And I decided, you know what? Is this business for me or is it my life's work? And I've decided this is my life's work. And if all it ever matters is showing maybe 3 people and my children that this mattered to me very deeply, I've done well. And I decided this is what I'm going to stick with. And I'm just going to move away from the social media numbers, even my own numbers, like financial numbers. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll end up doing something else to bring in, financial revenue. But this is going to remain what I've decided it will be. And it's helped me a lot just to not wrestle with that all the time. But anyway, back to saying like, it's all hard, but we have to show that some things are just worth it. And
Amen.
To some people more than others, but you pick your battle. Pick one thing, say, I can show up here and I'm going to stick to it. And I don't know what your listeners, I don't know what you do, but we all do work and it's all important. So you can choose, this is how I'm going to commit to protecting children. If you're maybe a teacher, you work at a hospital, or, you're a data analyst, you can think about ways and how you can keep kids in mind in your line of work. So I do see that opportunity for everybody. And I truly believe that that's the only thing that will make a difference, because just my research was showing me that I remember just interviewing a mom who was an FBI agent here in Portland, and she was truly overwhelmed. And she kept telling me, we're behind. We're like not... People maybe think that we have this cutting edge technology. It's not where it's put to use. It's not for protecting children. They're actually not. She was telling me the ways that they were trying to identify potential traffickers and pedophiles. And I was at the same time interviewing sex buyers, right? So both sides. And it was interesting, the mismatch in like, our federal agents have a lot more restrictions and bureaucracy. Guess who doesn't? So that's kind of the big difference. And so I think it's all of us having to take on some ownership. Maybe we can't stop this big ring, but I feel like there's things we can do in our own circles. We can educate our children. I had this conversation with my 4-year-old the other day. I said, hey, if you feel like somebody's pointing a camera, honey, you know when somebody's taking a picture of you. If you see somebody pointing your camera, just close your eyes and say, I don't want a picture of me. Just cover your face. And I keep telling them that this is a normal thing to do. What's not normal is people just taking your photo without asking you. And this is one conversation we can have with children and with adults. So like we've asked all of the adults in our family circle since the time when I was first pregnant, like, please do not, any photos that we send to you, do not share on any social media. And that was like a conversation that was awkward once, but it's a boundary we set once and we never have to set it again because they know. And so I think these are the small things we can start introducing. We can educate our children that they still have power, that they're not powerless in this world. We remind ourselves we're not powerless. There's things we can do, and we don't know what ripple effect they might have. Like I said, maybe my biggest accomplishment was I've had a few people tell me that I've inspired them not to share the photos of their kids online. And that to me was like, all right, I'm good. If I retire tomorrow, I feel like it mattered, it mattered. So I'm just going to reiterate because I keep saying that, but I don't think, like I said, everybody's best response is the same. I also want to acknowledge that not all kids are vulnerable in the same way. There are kids who truly are more vulnerable in every way. Some people may have more buffer around their families and their children in ways that they feel like they can protect their kids. There's so many families that don't have that. There's so many families, there's so many kids that don't even have reliable adults in their life. There's so many kids that don't have the financial, the social support to protect in case something was to go down. It's just like thinking about, that's what I'm saying. There's no one size fits all response, but I think consciously we all need to enter into this conversation and see how we can put our best foot forward. And maybe it won't be even doing too much about what you're doing with your kids, but maybe other kids in your life and thinking about who's more vulnerable, who might be an easier target.
I like that you put yourself in the kids' shoes as you're navigating through your day, doing an adult thing, thinking, if someone took my photo right now, what would that make me feel like? And, I'm taking a relaxing bath. Does someone need to be able to hear the photo? And does this need to go online? Okay. So,
Oh, no, there's humor to it, too. Sometimes I just think this is, like, plain hilarious. Like, this is just ridiculous that we thought this is a normal thing to do. Yeah, there's moments where I'm like, some things are a safety issue and some things are just like absurd and hilarious to me.
I think it is good for us to reflect in general, reflect and ask ourselves, what is my goal with this? Am I trying to take a photo of a moment? Am I actually like changing the actual moment? Am I taking a picture of this person because I just think they're really interesting looking and like kind of shocking? Are you exposing this person, possibly exploiting this person? Do you have interactions with them later, or are you just kind of using them?
It's like a social capital, using them for some kind of an exchange. I tell you, doing photography work has made me reflect on so much. There's so much tied into it, right? We talk about photography and how it's become such a consumerist thing right now. It kind of wants to tap into the vain, the insecure, the never enough side of us, which breaks my heart. It's like this was in the early days, celebrating and highlighting humanity, bringing us into deeper conversations. And with all the digital tools, with photography being so widely accessible now, and the editing software, my goodness, don't even get me started. And this is another thing I really respect about documentary photography is draws very specific limits about what you can edit. I mean, obviously, it's like up to you if you want to respect that as a photographer, but I feel like people who commit themselves to the genre respect that because that's their passion, right? You don't Photoshop things in or out. If you place them in the frame when you were shooting and they're there, they're going to stay there. That is the rule. I don't edit things out intentionally, like I won't remove the lamp that I didn't exclude from the frame. I'll just be like, oh, bummer, this would have been such a good photo if I just tilted a little bit to the left, right? Or angled my camera up. It also makes you a less lazy photographer. You have to think about this in the moment instead of relying on the software to fix it for you. So it's doing that level of disservice too, to the photographer and to the other person. And so speaking about all these like things that are negative, I love seeing so much positive happening too. It is, kind of have to look for it, but there's some photographers that I feel like are doing really good work in bringing us back to the true artistry and like asking the question of what's the point? What's the story you're trying to tell? Does it need to be told, right? I feel like art in its truest form has always been at odds with whatever economic system you have going on right now. It's capitalism, but historically it's been different, right? Because the true nature of each system. So we haven't had one that has been holistic and that has been really all-encompassing of all human conditions the way we should be living, right? And so I feel like when you're an artist and you're trying to get pushed into this capitalist machine, it just doesn't work. And so when people talk about starving artists, I get offended. It's assuming that artists are set out to be millionaires. True artists are here to make us question, to make us reevaluate, to heal, to point back to a true north. And so starving artists doesn't even make sense, right? It's just like that is not who they're set out to be. Artists are not here on earth to create this business conglomerate. They're here on earth to bring us back to ourselves, to who we're supposed to be, to question the systems, to get us to be better, right? And kind of valuing that human condition. So I feel like it can't work. And some people, there are people who I think are great artists and who do make living off of it. And I'm happy that that worked out for them. I truly am. I think because we need them. For a lot of people, their work is a lot more in the shadows in some ways, but I do think it's important. There was this saying going around recently in social media that says, we often say if we traveled back into our past and we worry that if we change a little something, it would change the entire course of our life.
Rebellion, art as an act of rebellion, and now, the part of my mind that's like the skeptic that's going, who's getting the money? Where is the money? What is the goal? And I'm seeing AI, and what the focus on AI companies is like, how can we take over the role of the artist in music, in film, with actors and screenwriting, with photography. When I think of that, I go, oh, it's because the powers that shouldn't be know that art is like the origins of uprising and revolution in many ways, or art changes you internally. Art often, not all artists, but often does involve self-reflection. And if you want to change the world, you have to start with the self-change. That it's like, yeah, art is a threat to the oligarchy, or art is a threat to these bigger structures that try to keep everyone in line and just work the 9-to-5 job that you might not have a connection to.
Okay, I'm reading a book you need to know about, recommended by my photography mentor. I've also just want to say that I've kind of stumbled upon, but I don't believe in that either. You know, I feel like it was this intentional direction of my life that brought me to some incredible mentors who shaped my photography thinking, my skills. And I still have so much growth to do. And I kind of hesitate saying that I'm a photographer because I look up to them and I'm like, oh, you know, I have so much to learn and I'm humbled by them, but I love them. So anyway, one of them recommended this book called Bullshit Jobs. It's an anthropological study of jobs that are considered to be completely irrelevant to human existence here. And I think it's even wider than what the author says. I think it's a lot more jobs that are completely unnecessary for the human flourishing and meeting any needs. But it's a really interesting concept. So I feel like you might like reading it. It's a total tangent right now, but I haven't finished it, so it's not lasting. But so far, it's been really interesting. And I think about artists as one of the sort of jobs that are so undervalued. It's artists, it's, you know, theologians and philosophers, those obviously who do it well, are kind of at the core of questioning and pulling us back out of these really, I mean, we're like, right now, we are just like headed into our own destruction, right? And it's obvious. It's like we can't stop this machine. But anyway, this is just encourage the artists because I think the oppressors, the emperors, have no creativity. They're doing the same thing they've always done. And I'm watching so much of the resistance, so much of community coming together in such creative ways that, one, they can't predict because they don't have creative thinking. They are relying just only on power, on brute force. And so I see this and I'm so inspired and I'm like, yes, it's not going to be one big artist, two big artists. It's going to be all of us embracing the inner artist in us, questioning the little things that we can do, making new things that help us see things differently, right? So I talk about a lot of kind of dark and heavy things in the podcast here, but also like, I don't wake up every day and take the camera thinking about it. This has just shaped my thinking. Now when I take the camera, I do what I've always done because I'm committed to it. And I think about, I'm going to post a photo. This photo can be on social media because it shows a little story, but it doesn't show any kids' faces or anything. It feels personal and private. And I'm going to continue showing that this way is possible because when you create a new way, instead of just, you can criticize this until we all turn blue, right? Our faces turn blue. But if you can show a different way in any small area that seems small, I think we're creating a new brain path, really. Just you're like, I am able to see something differently now. I'm able to create it. When I see it, I can create it. So I think it's really powerful to create. Like you create with your music, you invite people into writing music differently with so much more intentional. Even when you write to me, with like your intentionality behind music that you write, the dignity that you show, even when you talk about love, gosh, love has been so cheapened in our music. Mm-hmm. It has been just, for the most part, it's just sad. I'm like, this is not love. Please stop writing songs.
No, or it's like a very unhealthy relationship.
Yeah, but showing a human emotion in a dignified way, that's also really true. And that we can resonate with is powerful. So you're just showing people, hey, this can be done. This exists, you know?
Well, for me, between everything you've said about photography in this discussion, current events, and your work, the word that just keeps coming to me is like integrity. When you decided, this is my life's work, that's how I've approached my music, where I say, I will always make music, regardless of who's listening. Music, it was a big part of my upbringing, and it felt like besides my faith, It felt like my safety net. It was the place I went to. It kept my feet on the ground. And it's also a big area of my life that I processed my faith and I had conversations with God and thinking about the world. But I always felt like music saved my life in many ways. When I worked at the group home and as an advocate to teens, music and art was often on their safety list. When they were feeling vulnerable, they reached out to music or the arts. So the role of the artist for me is paramount. And like you said, undervalued or underestimated at times. But the integrity that you have, where it's like, one, this has helped me see a different perspective. This is helping bring different insights and revelations and awarenesses to me as I am on my artist path. But two, if it can do that for anyone else, or just how your approach has made others think, it has as well with me. Like you said, it's not one size fits all, this decision on how to handle one's own photos or one's kids in photos and digital presence, but if it can just make someone pause and give some thought to it, thoughtfulness, these words that I think with you and your craft and just your own, how you navigate the world, is integrity. We can't take these physical things with us when we're gone. You can take your integrity in your soul. Also this thoughtfulness. And you're looking at these things with empathy and other-focused instead of just self-focused and self-promotion. Yeah, thank you for providing a very different perspective that I truly had never heard of. I just think it's an interesting dialogue of like, what if we just pause and ask, like, why am I doing this in any area of our life? Because even just recently, and Jesse and I were walking before this, just talking about social media and how people are putting everything out there where I'm like, you can tell where you live by your posts and they're all public. Yeah. And even just now with like people trying to steal your identity so that they can drain your bank account. I even heard this thing of, can someone look at your social media and guess your password because you've posted about your dog Snowflake and they've now guessed your password as Snowflake and hacked into your account. I think society is moving so fast on this digital trajectory that we're like, oh, I'm keeping up with the trend and I've got to have my kids do it. What if we just paused and said, why am I doing this? And then Jesse, my husband, said, privacy is going to be this entity in the future that we want.
It's Banksy called it luxury. In the world that like everybody seeks to be known and famous, like it's luxury to be anonymous. Like,
yeah, it will be a luxury.
And so I think about that for my children. I want to give them some gift of privacy, of being able to narrate their lives, of being able to decide how much and where and with whom they share. We don't have to come to it from a point of fear and we're afraid. It is important to consider. We have to consider it. And then make boundaries. I mean, there's this book called Paradox of Choice by Barry Schwartz. I'm not sure if you've read it, but every time you take a photo, having to decide, is this a safe photo to share or is this not? Can someone traffic my child because of it? Can someone bully them? Can someone take them and turn them? That is really exhausting for a nervous system to be deciding. So he's a big proponent of like, whatever decisions you can create ahead of time and make strict decisions for some things in your life, it alleviates a lot of stress. So then like you're saying, I'm never having more than 2 glasses of wine at dinner. Then you've eliminated stress or just that moment of having to decide, am I going to have another glass? And so I think that's kind of what I want to invite more people into. Like sit with this whole conversation and then say, okay, I'm going to set aside time to really think through what best practices I can put in place for my family and for children that I might be working at in your, school or church or nonprofit. And then make that decision once and maybe come back to it and reevaluate it once a year, once every 3 months. It doesn't matter. You don't have, but then you've made a decision and you can spend your energy on other ways you can improve other things. I just want to leave that as an invitation for everybody. Do spend some time with it. It feels heavy. It feels daunting. And I don't want us to feel guilt. I just want us to feel like, hey, there's an opportunity here that I'm not seeing. Maybe this can be worth considering for my kids in my environment, and maybe it can be a conversation I can have with a few people in my life. And that's something,
Yeah. I love it. I think it's just smart for us to be thinking about these concepts as the world is progressing so fast digitally. But I am curious, are you working on any current projects?
Yeah, I'm working on some personal projects. One is...
You can come in if you want. That's totally up to you.
I'm almost done. We have to do some pausing and restarting the look. Come, do you want to see Auntie Lex?
Hi. Hi, guys. It's so good to meet you.
Hey, guys, you want to be on the podcast? I'm going to ask you some questions.
Yeah.
We have some questions to ask. I'm going to close the door. Auntie Lex and I were talking about kids' privacy, but not like your body privacy, but like when you don't want to show your face or your pictures to anybody. Do you talk about that? We say, hey, can I send your picture? And sometimes you say no. And what else did Mama tell you the other day? If somebody points the camera at you like this to take your picture and you don't want them to or you don't know them, you just close your eyes like you say, I don't want a picture. No pictures. Yep. You cover your face and then they can take a picture of your face and no one will know that was you. And you say, no, I don't want to be in the picture. Or someone just say, no pictures.
I don't want a picture.
Yeah. We would talk about that. Yeah. Does that feel good to know that you have that option? Yeah. Yeah? You like having that option? Did you know that you could do that? Or you just thought you had to be in the photos?
I just thought I had to be in the photos.
You thought you had to be in the photos? Would it be helpful if we taught you guys more often?
Yeah.
Remind you more often that you don't have to be in the photos?
Yeah.
I don't want to be in everyone's photos either.
I don't either. I want to have a sense of privacy. I want to know that it makes me feel safer if I don't feel like anybody can take a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes sense, doesn't it? It's kind of like, duh, why wouldn't it be that way?
Yeah.
I should have a choice in this. It's about me.
And if you want your pictures to be on the internet, we talked a lot about the internet. It's kind of confusing because you're still really little. But yeah. Charlie's getting up to join the conversation. Charlie, what about you and your pictures?
He says, sometimes I don't like my picture taken at all, that I actually swat the phone out of my mom's
That's
hand.
another option. Just swat the phone. But if you don't know people, you don't want to do that. You can always tell mom and dad, no pictures.
I love your family. You guys are so amazing and kind. Yeah. Is there a certain project that you're working on now, or are you in the stages of like getting inspiration for a project? So, in terms of projects, I'm working on some personal projects. One is the story of my grandpa, who is still alive, but is aging, and he's a very important person in my life. And so I did a day in the life session with him that is just turned out beautiful. I love those photos. They're so special, and wanted to hold on to a piece of him in that way. And then I captured, he was a pastor at a church, some of his notes, and he wrote poetry. So I included pictures of his poems, like him holding them in his hands, and just his life of a truly a servant of people. He is a true servant, a very humble, wise, calm man. So that's a project that I'm kind of working on, in addition to a few other things, like one project for my kids. And I love that one.
Yeah, and this is also something that I offer to people. I call legacy photo stories. Maybe there's a processing, maybe the death of a loved one, and they want pictures of those spaces. People who want to mark some big milestones in their life. I think there's a day in the life of like, this is what our life looks like, and some written text or just photos. And those can be very powerful ways to honor a person and a story and hold on to it. So basically create your own little photo book project. It's just essentially like having your personal photojournalist for the story you want told to your kids and your grandkids, and so that's so special. It's so special, and I'm very passionate about it because it's so important to me. So I'm working through some of those personal stories that I want told, and some of those I will publish, some of them I won't, but it is an option. I want people to be aware of that option. There are ways you can work with a photographer to create a visual story that sits in your heart. What is your website? Yeah, so it's just my first name, last name, very easy to spell. Do you mind spelling it for us? SaraStanković.com. Spelling it in English, SaraStankovic.com.
And you want to say anything about how people can book a session?
I am located in Portland, and I've so far done only local work, but it is my plan to expand in the future and be able to do more work, especially in this genre when my best fit may not always be locally. There's so many people, and I'm also really interested in exploring what life looks like outside of just this one area. So I would love to highlight stories and capture people's lives in other parts of the country as well. So if anybody's interested, they can reach out and we'll see what we can do.
I love your story. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
So fun.
And give us new perspectives, introduce us to yourself and your art. Everything I was hearing too is just even these photo books that you're talking about, photos that you're capturing for your family, yourself, and your other people and their families and generations to come in this project with your grandpa. You're creating these visitor records, these time capsules, and that's so much what we like to promote on this podcast is how these artists are creating these mini time capsules, and when we're no longer here, the legacy that you're leaving behind. And on that note of a visitor record, if you could know how and or when you would die, would you want to know? And why?
That's a straight up no for me. And part of me is very tempted to say yes, but I'm an overthinker, and I feel like it would alter the way I live my life in a way that sounds like it would be exhausting. As a mom, it is exhausting to think about leaving my kids. Yeah, so I would not. I'll just trust there's a reason we don't know anyway, so it's probably better.
So far, everyone has said no, so I'm always curious. Okay. I'm like, yeah, I'm always curious, but...
Lastly, if there is any listener who was really inspired by this conversation and wants to continue it, I would love to talk more, either via Instagram or my website, sarastanković.com, or Instagram handle is Sara Stanković Photo. I would also love to hear from anybody who has an interesting or different or just a quirky idea for a photo project. This kind of stuff is my jam. So let me know. I would love to work together or just honestly just dream together and see what comes out of it. And yeah, thank you once again for having me. This has been really awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much for the dialogue today. And everyone who's listening, go check out Sara's work online. I think you'll be very impressed.
Thank you. You're so kind.
Thank you for visiting.
Thank you, Alex.